Tenants' transaction group balances will appear at the top of the screen here and provide us with a clear indication of a tenant's balances for both rent and other non-rent transaction groups. This is a total of all of the transactions within that group, and if the tenant is paid up to date or is in credit, the transaction group balance will appear in black, and if the tenant is in debit, the transaction group balance will appear in red. We can see here that this tenant only has transactions and a balance relating to rent. Now let's look at a tenant who has transactions relating to both rent and other non-rent transactions. We'll exit this screen, which takes us back to the Manage Tenancies screen, and search for Ian Moss by clicking on any surname in the surname column and typing in the first few letters of Ian Moss's surname. We'll double-click to open the screen. In this tenancy, we can see the transaction group balances across the top, and here we see that he owes us $1,570 in rent, $70 for water charges, $70 for gardening, and $140 for damages. Up to 5 transaction group balances will appear in this section, and balances will automatically increase or decrease when transactions for that transaction group are entered into the ledger. The transaction group with the largest amount of debit will appear on the left, and the credits will show towards the right. Chintaro will calculate these figures in descending order from left to right, and when payments are entered or rent is generated, these balances will update. For example, we can see that before a transaction is entered for a cash rent payment of $240, Grace Jones owes $788.57 in rent, $130 for damages, $65.71 for utilities, and $65.71 for gardening. She also has $23 credit in Other. We can print a statement for specific transaction groups. For example, if we wanted to print a utilities statement, we can do this by clicking the Print Statement button, selecting Transaction Group, and dropping this list down to select the transaction group of utilities. We'll leave the rest of these fields and click on Continue. Now we can print this statement for our tenant. We also have a separate screen that we can use to have a look at for all of our tenants' balances. To see this screen, we go back to the Home screen, into Finance and Tenancy Balances. Click Yes to the message that appears, and we'll go into this screen in detail in a later video. But for the moment, if you want to see the transaction group balances for your tenants, use the scroll bar to move to the right-hand side where we can see the split categories 1 to 5 with the balances of those splits. You can then print or export this data to produce a report for all of your tenants' balances.